Huh. I guess when you also can't travel long distances very easily, a city being flooded really does feel like the whole world got flooded too. I think it's more so all early civilizations grew near rivers or deltas, which tend to flood. Almost all early cultures have a flood myth of some kind. This is likely due to similar beginnings meeting similar ends, not necessarily a global flood. Way too many people in this post confusing desert and dessert. Just remember dessert. The thing you eat after dinner has two S's because you always want seconds of dessert. I'ma have to desert this comment thread. Actually, you can more easily tell because when you type dessert on your iPhone, ice creams pop up. The idea that 2 is enough to have a healthy continuation of that species. Well, according to Genesis, God actually ordered Noah to take 7 pairs of all clean animals and 7 pairs of birds. It was only the unclean animals that were supposed to be taken as a single pair.
https://www.google.com/amp/s/www.biblegateway.com/passage/%3f search equals Genesis %2b7:2-3 and version equals KJV and interface equals AMP.
Next week on Noah's Farm. Fun cruise ideas for you and the family. The Levant was incredibly green back then. The only desert was the Negev. That's what I came here to say. Same with northern Africa. A lot of places that are deserts now would have been rather green a couple thousand years ago. Anything is possible when you've got the power of God and anime on your side. A literal deus ex machina and the power of friendship. Dark Lord with 1,000 years of training doesn't stand a chance. Sun Tzu did that. He too of every animal on earth, and then he hears them onto a boat, and then he beat the crap out of every single one. And that's why every time there's a bunch of animals together it's called a zoo. The fact that people quote the Bible to strengthen their opinions astonishes me. Or when people use social media to strengthen theirs. Israel is on the Mediterranean Sea. According to the OT, Noah did not live in ancient Israel. Exact locations we can follow are not given but likely in the Mesopotamian area. It's not a coincidence that most ancient civilizations in that area have a flood myth. It took me an embarrassing several moments to work out you weren't talking about the original trilogy. If somebody would have explained the Bible to me like this, I might have actually believed why it was written that way. The Bible and almost all religious texts either explain completely normal natural phenomena or set behavior standards and rules through the use of stories and metaphors. The problem started when the crazies started to interpret these in their own ways to justify their actions. It wasn't a desert back then. In addition, it's right by the sea, and they also had fishermen and sea trade. You are forgetting. Those events happened so long ago that the land there was most probably with a temperate climate. I mean even so, when that area is your world, you don't think about if you can fit kangaroos or Komodo dragons. Noah. I said 2 dogs. Not 2 chihuahuas, 2 Great Danes, 2 beagles, 2 bulldogs, 2 corgis, 2 poodles, 2 huskies. There's more animals than we can see. It would be impossible to take them all. What about all the insects and spiders? I'm sure some ticks and fleas came along, but it's still not enough. Also, 2 animals isn't enough to reproduce a healthy population. Yeah, well, snakes can't talk either. Just take it with a big grain of salt. It wasn't 2. It was 8 of every clean animal, 2 of every unclean animal, minus birds and fish. How I know the Bible isn't the literal word of God. No mention of kangaroos or duck-billed platypuses. Well, Australia doesn't actually exist, so there's that. And 1,000 spiders, don't forget about them. If you didn't bring any on board, don't worry. They'll find their way in as soon as the floodwaters start rising. Upside down face. Desert of what? We calling the region Israel now? Eating shellfish is a sin. Yeah. Ever have shrimp cocktail in the desert? Hey man, you better not touch that pork. I'm warning you now. You can just rip up your ticket to heaven if you even think about it. Continuing to believe in this bullshit is a disservice to mankind. Yeah. Noah in the Amazon would have been way more high stakes. Yeah. But why did they have to include mosquitoes and roaches? And it must have seemed plausible that God made man in his image when no one in the vicinity had ever heard of other primates, let alone seen one. As it stands, we are looking at a God who bears a marked resemblance to a chimpanzee. The flood stories originate from when people began to discover fossilized shells on mountaintops. They had no knowledge of plate tectonics, which push fossils from the bottom of the sea to the tops of mountains. So, they all, very reasonably, assumed that a great flood had occurred long ago. Lo and behold, a myth is born and passed on through the ages in every culture. They'd probably had been like WTF as a boat. And all of the wildest threats a limitless cosmic power can come up with are normal shit like water, fire, and bugs. Don't forget mind-controlling bears to eat children that made fun of a bald man. American Indian and South American ancient cultures had world flood beliefs. They find ancient seashells in my area of Kentucky and we are not in the flood plain of the rivers. It took a lot of water to dissolve the mineral out of the cave system in the state of Kentucky. It doesn't happen now even though much of the state gets flooded now and then. Much of America used to be under inland seas and tectonic movement pushes the fossils around. That's why you sometimes find sea life fossils on top of mountains. Mesas in the American Southwest are made of ancient fossilized coral reefs. The Bible actually says Noah took 2 of each kind. Not 2 of every animal. 7 each of every clean animal. Ox, sheep, goat, deer, gazelle, llama. 7 each of birds of the air. The clean animals they brought were for sacrifice, food while out at sea. Obviously, they were breeding them as well to be used post-flood to repopulate. That doesn't really change anything. Still physically impossible. Probably wasn't a desert 10,000 years ago. Just a guess. But I get what you're saying. Limited viewpoint. From limited location, travel and limited experience equals myths lacking logic. Is it a dessert now? What kind? I can't imagine waiting thousands of years for a tasty treat, but maybe it's asterisk that good. Israel didn't exist then and now it's a name for occupied Palestine. My favorite cope is when Christians will say, well, the diversity of species evolved since then. Like elk, gazelle, reindeer, caribou, deer, moose, etc. all evolved from a single ancestor to suit their new environments as their populations dispersed from the original landing site of the ark. But baby, that's evolution. I thought we didn't like that. Anyways, I should mention that I'm a creationist. I just don't believe any earthly religion has true insight into the supernatural nature of reality. Lots of great wisdom and philosophy, just can't take it literally. God is a clockmaker, eh? Holy shit. This is the first really good shower thought I've read in ages. That's a great point. That's the first good shower thought I read in like a month.